All right, welcome to Chapter 1 of James Paul Gee's An Introduction to Discourse Analysis, Theory, and Method, published by Routledge in London and New York in 1999. James Paul Gee, you can Google him, feel free. He's very famous sociolinguist, which means that he studies the way that action and culture and things in the world relate to and are affected by the language that we use to describe those things. I want to say a couple of things before you start reading. This screencast is really my attempt to give you a sense of what you need to read and how you should read it. The first thing that I want to talk about, though, is something that Gee talks about toward the end of this chapter, is this idea of multiple audiences, and your audience as students in a business writing class to this work. Anyway, this is written primarily for his colleagues in discourse studies, which he says here. This is a high-level text that, and when I say high level, I don't mean it's smarter or anything like that. It just assumes that the reader has a lot of very specific knowledge. You wouldn't expect me to understand a lot of, say, snowboarding slang, just in the same way as James Paul Gee doesn't really expect you all to know a lot of the jargon slang in some ways that he uses in this chapter. Anyway, so just be aware of that. Feel free to struggle, ask questions, whatever. And he says this here too. So the big difference between these audiences is that he is here creating both a theory and a method of discourse analysis. So the theory of discourse analysis is, he outlines in this chapter, and it's fairly understandable. But the idea is that language both creates and reflects reality. This is an important concept to grasp, and it's important to read this section, but it's not as important for our purposes here as the method. In a lot of ways, we're just going to assume that he's right about the theory because we just don't have time to argue with him. This is what you would spend your time doing in a sociolinguistics class, but we're more concerned with the method here, the method of discourse analysis. So it's important to read the theory sections, but I think it's more important to look at kind of the assumptions that he makes, especially with these examples that he gives. So I think he does a good job with the examples, especially in this first chapter. So read the example closely, the theory and method section. Read, but it's not as essential. I'd rather you spend more time understanding the method and the examples than the more theoretical stuff. If you have any questions, please feel free. Finally, you can kind of skip the stuff at the end about the structure of the book. That's a convention of academic writing, where the end of the first chapter usually describes all the following chapters, but you certainly don't need to read that stuff because we're only reading the first 2 chapters and then chapter 5. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. Enjoy.